you need to realize that most writing rules aren't laws, they're rules of thumb. Patrick Rothfuss.
You're listening to Writing Roots, brought to you by Aspen House Publishing.
Welcome to Writing Roots. I'm Lee Hull.
And I'm Lee Esses.
April Fools.
April Fools, I am Lee Hull.
And I'm Lee Esses.
And we are going to be talking about rules this month. More often, the best ways to break the rules when writing.
There are a lot of rules thrown at especially new and aspiring authors that are do this, don't do this, make sure you don't ever start a book with weather, and only use said in dialogue or never use said in dialogue.
Never use adverbs. Adverbs are okay. And that's the problem. So many of these rules are conflicting rules. So it is difficult to navigate this very treacherous sea of advice and rules and guidelines when you're just getting started.
So we are going to go over a list of a bunch of very common rules that you'll hear, why they are rules, why people say these things, and then the best ways to break them. Because we're artists, we love to break things.
Most of the rules that we're going to cover throughout the month come from Elmore Leonard's list of writing rules. Keep in mind that Elmore Leonard is best known for this particular list of rules rather than any of his actual writing, which is a lot of why we are encouraging people to break a lot of the rules that are in this list.
To be fair, a lot of these rules exist for certain kinds of writers. If you are writing a certain style, then this rule applies. We will point that out as we cover each rule, but a lot of rules will exist because they see it in certain genres, not because they see it at large.
Overall, you can expect us to talk about why the rule exists and what makes for the best exceptions, why it is possible to break these.
This might seem a little strange because we are a podcast who tells authors what to do with their writing. We don't want to come across as saying, don't listen to us. This is a rule that exists in writing, so we are going to tell you these things, but also understanding how to break the rules is going to be the most important part of any of these. We will often say, hey, if you're doing it this way, that is a good reason to break the rule that we're talking about, whatever it is. But for the most part, a lot of what we tell people will apply to most people.
I really do feel like we've followed Captain Barbossa's advice of, they're more guidelines than actual rules.
Writers are artists. That means that if you tell us a rule, the first thing we're going to do is try to break it.
It's like a lot of us may or may not have ADHD and problems with oppositional defiant disorder. We kind of don't like rules.
Someone tells us to do something, we're going to be automatically inclined to do the opposite. Another thing that you will often see for people giving rules, first-time authors will go, but look, this huge author out there that everyone loves and adores did the thing that you're telling us not to do. The rules are different. If you're Brandon Sanderson, you can write a single book that is longer than the entirety of the Lord of the Rings series. I would not advise it for a debut author, especially if you're looking to get traditionally published.
So while we inherently, in most cases, want to break the rules, we want to push the boundaries that have been set for us, you do need to understand why rules exist in the first place. Rules are there for a reason. Especially when you are getting started, they can provide a good structure for you.
This is just a good rule for life, is to understand the rule before you break it. If the fence is saying no hiking beyond this point, and you hike anyway because you're not going to let a sign tell you what to do, you might fall off a cliff. The fence is there, the rule is there to protect you most of the time. It's not there to limit you. It's not there to make sure you stay in your hole or whatever. It's there to help you succeed. So learning why the rule exists and then deciding if it applies to you is going to be your best recipe for success when breaking rules.
Like in the case of adverbs, the rule to not use them is there because it's an easy red flag that there's a better word, that there is a better way to phrase whatever you're saying. But you need to understand that in order to follow the rule and know when to break it. And a lot of why you need to understand the rules before you break them is because readers, and if you want to be traditionally published, publishers, have expectations about how to interact and how to comprehend the wall of text that you present them. Rules, if you are breaking them without understanding them, usually create confusion.
Let's say you're writing a murder mystery, and there is a rule that says we have to know who the bad guy is in order to follow the plot structure of the book. We have to know who the Ring is, we have to know who Voldemort is, we have to know Vader. Understanding who the bad guy is in the first act is generally good advice. If you're writing a murder mystery, this advice does not apply to you, because figuring out who the bad guy is the entire purpose of the genre.
Yet there's also a little piece there that if you are writing a murder mystery, even if your readers or your characters don't know it, they should at least encounter the murderer early on. It may not be revealed that they're the murderer, but at least there are some traces so you don't suddenly introduce your murderer at the end and we have no idea who they are, why they're involved, what they're doing there.
A big part about understanding and meeting audiences' expectations comes down to the fact that you're writing to communicate. Readers understand a certain thing a certain way. If I am trying to use the word vermilion to describe the ocean, as this nice vibrant blue that's reflecting the sky and it's gorgeous, but the word vermilion means red, readers are going to see that as red. And they're going to be very concerned about the health of that ocean. When you are writing, readers have an automatic understanding of what the words mean. That is how you paint pictures with it. The same applies to writing rules. The readers have an understanding of how story structure works, of how your particular genre communicates. Breaking those rules can make for a very uncomfortable reader experience.
And those expectations do vary depending on the genre, and you can visually see those expectations, those rules, in the cover design. You can see a book and know, okay, this is probably mystery because of these elements, or this is probably fantasy because of these elements in the cover. Lately, this is probably romantasy because it's got weird flowers in this very specific thin gold font.
Human psychology is kind of the same. Your readers, even though they are all unique and all pretty much intelligent, the psychology, the way they interpret something is the same. If you are starting your book with an alarm clock or with the weather or these types of tropes, they might not give your book the time it deserves in order to break the mold that you're setting.
Obviously, if you know that these things are cliche, if you know that the weather or alarm clock as a way to start is cliche, and you want to play with that, if you are intentionally writing satire, you can absolutely do this. But if you are trying to write something very straightforward, you don't want to break this rule because it's going to be cliche. It's going to be boring and people are going to roll their eyes rather than be like, okay, this is funny.
Therefore, you want to introduce what makes it unique right away. You don't get more than a paragraph before they sign and close the book. An example of this would be, my eyes flew open to the sound of an alarm clock blaring in my ear. Yawn, not interesting. Which was weird because electricity stopped working after the nuclear apocalypse a decade ago. Okay, now we're interested because you've already broken the cliche and you've already broken the rule in a way that we can track with.
Because as much as you don't want it to happen, they are coming to your book with past experience, past knowledge. This is not likely going to be the very first book they've ever read. So they are already coming to you tired of prologues from 20,000 years before the story starts. They are tired of stories that start with a young girl looking at herself in a mirror to describe her whole image. They're tired of these things because they've seen it again and again, and it is, at this point, boring to them. So while yes, you can break rules that have been presented and that are there because people have experienced it too many times, knowing when to break the rules is important. And that's why we're doing this entire month, because breaking rules is fun.
We honestly want to encourage you to break rules. Breaking rules is a lot of what makes us artists. Breaking out of these stereotypes gives us an interesting perspective on something that is generally mundane. So yes, honestly, please break the rules. After you learned why the rule exists in the first place.
Learn why it exists, follow it for a little bit, and then you can break the rule. Breaking rules is also often a great way to generate writing prompts. Use a prompt that says, start your story waking up to an alarm clock, and find a unique way to present that. It can make you push the boundaries. It can help you get outside the cliche, the normal, and really explore the edges and possibilities of your writing.
So throughout this month, whenever we say this is how to break the rule, that method that we're talking about, you can go, okay, now I understand how to do this best. Let's practice it. Because practicing breaking rules will help you find your own voice as an author and inadvertently make you a very unique storyteller.
The biggest thing we want to encourage you to do is understand why the rules are there, decide if they apply, and then, most importantly,
write selfishly.
If you have a question or comment for our hosts or a topic you'd like us to cover, send us an email at writingroots@aspenhousepublishing.com or find us on Facebook by searching for Aspen House Publishing.